It's better to burn out than to fade away.
Hey, what's up guys? This is Brian at WhisperStatus74. Welcome to the community, welcome to the channel. If this is the first time you are seeing me, please consider liking and subscribing. We're real tech for real people. Today's video will be a comparison of the Sony X90J full array local dimming LED from 2021 versus the 2017 75-inch Sony 900E. Very popular panel that year. The X90J is the successor to the 900H from last year. The 900E was below the 930E, 940E, and Master Series Z9D. Very popular panel. The 900E is my panel, one of my favorite LEDs of all time. The X90, again, is just below the X95, which has not been released yet. The X90J is on loan to me from Value Electronics. Special thank you to Robert and Wendy Zahn of Value Electronics. Check them out in the description below, and also their Scarsdale, New York location. The X90 will also be for sale once I return it as an open box item with a brand new warranty and sold at an open box price. So check that out. The 900E is one of my favorite panels of all time. I'm really enjoying the X90, and I love to see how a panel from 2017, where I think full array local dimming was at its peak, versus a modern processor and a modern LED now. So I think it's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting demo. It will be a very long video. We'll do several of my favorite demos from HDR channel, LG Global, Samsung, and also from my good friend Jennifer Gala. Please check out her channel on YouTube. Very talented artist, filmmaker. We used her clip because you'll be able to see the aspect ratio and black bars, so I can show you the full array local dimming algorithm on both and the light control on both to see if there's much blooming into the black bars. We'll also go off angle to show you that blooming using her clip. So special thank you to Jennifer Gala. Special thank you to Value Electronics. We'll discuss all this in the demo behind the camera. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go check out the content. Alright guys, we're here behind the camera. We are now showing you the preset for the X90J and the Sony 900E. I will label these intermittently through the video. The X90 is on the bottom at 65 inches. The Sony 900E is at 75 inches. The 900E is about 3 inches behind the X90 on a stand, so the size difference is much greater than what you're seeing here in the video. The reason I like using standard for just video purposes, it is a more vibrant preset, has a lot of punch to it. I will go over to the custom preset in the middle of the video to show you a more accurate representation of what you see. For context, my channel, I'm not super interested in accuracy or showing calibrated settings. I'm not a calibrator. What I do want to show you is how a lot of these displays look in a real world usage, how you would use them as a regular person watching displays, as that's all that I am as well. I do like some processing on. I do enjoy black adjust. I do enjoy live color, especially in HDR. All of these demos are in HDR, though it's not being filmed in HDR. This is one of my favorite films, or demos I should say, from the HDR channel. Very vibrant demo. When you're watching two LEDs go at it from the same manufacturer, it is very interesting. For me, the 2016, 2017, where full array local dimming was really coming into its own with the Z9D, KS9800, Q9FN. Those panels to me were where full array really focused on maybe not crushing the blacks as much as light control. Sony then fell in love with shadow detail, making a more accurate image, which is why the blooming is handled differently over the years. There is a scene in here where I'll let it run where you'll see that the X90, once content is disabled or done, the local dimming will disable, which they started doing that after the 900E with the Sony 900F, which is why in menus you would see a tremendous amount of blooming as the local dimming would be switched off. you'll see that once the content ends for the 900E, the screen will remain black. It doesn't make much difference in content, but it's something to know if you're seeing a lot of excessive blooming within your menus, whether it is home for YouTube or game menus. Very beautiful demo, very vibrant. Now, what's interesting with the two different companies, or I should say two different models, same company, is there's times where they look absolutely identical. Then there's times where they look like they're from another company and they are still in the same preset. Now, there is more customization on the X90J as far as gradation, but there's high dynamic range or extended dynamic range on the 900E. A lot of different, but there is more flexibility with the X90. There are more presets, however, on the 900E. Sports mode was there. Now, the 900E has not been updated since probably a year after I got it. So you can see the colors here do look very different, though they are the same preset. When I switch over to custom, we'll switch to the more accurate Expert 2, which a lot of people love. It's warmer. I'm not a huge fan of it. I like my images to be a little bit cooler. These are LEDs, so they don't show up blue on screen like OLEDs. White is white. Now, while we're sitting here, I will talk a little bit about how the 900E was considered one of the best all-around panels. Very popular, much like the KS8000 from Samsung. In some ways, it was underrated. In some ways, it was overrated. The 930E was amazing that year, but was limited to 55 and 65. The 940E was only 75, had a very slow pixel response, which I also had. The Z9D shared the same pixel response and was also very expensive at $10,000. So the 900E kind of came in as this entry mid to high and was an excellent bang for the buck. It was followed by the 900F, the 950G, and last year's 950H. It will also be followed by the X95. The 900H was added as, another option in that 4K area, instead of having the 8 series, which a lot of times got rid of local dimming. So it gave you another option. So you had the 900H, and then you had this panel. So they are interesting. Now, the X90 was panned both in video form and written reviews when it first came out. It took an update about 2 weeks after its launch, and it's been put in a weird spot simply because it is the successor to a very well-liked 900H. It was expensive at its launch, and the X95 not being out put it in a weird spot because everyone wants to wait for the 95, which will be more expensive. And it also made the X90 more expensive than it should be initially, and still pretty expensive now. The X90 was also well reviewed by ratings.com, which I love, but everyone got very hung up on its lower color gamut. Though if you read that same article, they will say due to the higher peak brightness versus the 900H, it more than makes up for it in color volume. But there are times when you are watching these demos where the 900E either clearly has a wider color gamut or has a more rich tone. The question I have for you guys as you're watching this is, which one is more colorful? You may find that the higher color volume of the X90, it may have less color, but at sometimes look more colorful. So regardless of what the information truly is, it's really what you see to your eye. There are times where the X90 is much more vibrant, but the 900 is much deeper. I believe the 900 has a higher contrast ratio. It's hard to compare them from back then to now. And also the X90, while brighter, also does have a higher contrast ratio than last year's 900H. The only place it really lags behind is in its color volume. Or its color gamut, I should say. Now, in terms of light control, we talk about dimming zones, Sony doesn't really disclose their dimming zones. I believe the 900E has more dimming zones at 75 inches back then. I'm showing you here now as I'm going to switch over to custom, which is more accurate. When I do these demos or comparisons, people get very hung up on, well, cinema is the most accurate or custom is the most accurate. The challenge is that back then you had Cinema Home and Cinema Pro, so I put them both into custom, put them into similar presets, similar color expert 2. I also disabled live color. I personally like live color when using HDR, not outside of HDR, which was a much larger deal back then, simply because there wasn't as nearly enough HDR content back then. So you're watching majority of SDR, where now it's a lot more HDR. Simply showing you as we film this kind of on the fly how comparisons are done. I can always clean this up and edit it and make the video much shorter, but my videos are more long form. So, and as we are watching this as a premiere video, gives us more time to hang out together, almost like a live stream. Now showing you here how making it more accurate, you can see how the X90 in some ways can look not as vibrant, not as deep. I do think the blacks are better on the 900E in nearly every scene, but as I mentioned before, I believe there are more zones, and I do believe Sony's goal back then was to compete directly with OLED. The Z9D had barely any blooming at all, as well as the 940E. Blooming was not really an issue. It became an issue on everything after that, from the Z9F to the 950G. Now I'm showing you here how disabling, I believe this is the part where I'm disabling live color, can make the image look more like the Sony without. So what I'm trying to say is, by disabling live color on the X90, and I'll show you as I go back here, I'm able to make the Sony's look more similar. So while the top still has live color enabled, the bottom one doesn't. So showing you how you can match them, make them look more similar. Now as we get near the end of the video, I'm also going to put them into vivid mode to show you how bright and vibrant they can be. Though many of you don't use it, there is a small group out there that does appreciate seeing those presets. So it is funny how when I put live color on the X90, the saturation is off the charts. I'll re-enable it shortly. But the X90J can look more accurate without live color enabled, but looks much more saturated with it. Disabled, it looks more accurate. It's got a cooler look to it, even though they're the same color preset. Now the 900E on certain areas, on certain parts of these demos, you may see some flickering. You don't see that on the X90. I imagine that's the processor at work. Now for me personally, I'll show you as this clip ends. I want to show you how the blooming there, nothing on the 900E. This demo will be off by 1/8 of a second, but I wanted to show you as the image ends, as the content actually ends, you'll see how the local dimming on the 900E remains but disables on the X90. That's not only on the X90, that was on every LED from Sony since then. Whether it saves the local dimming or helps it be more efficient, it just looks terrible, but I wanted to show you the difference, where if you do have a panel like this and it disables local dimming while you're not watching content, that's what you're seeing. Your panel is not defective. Again, you have here LG Global, beautiful demo. One of my favorites. Now you can always see most of the time in these comparisons the X90 is brighter, even though the 900E I believe is brighter than its ratings review at 75 inches. I do believe it's at least 1,000 nits, but the X90 is clearly brighter. But is brighter really better? In many ways I feel the 900E still has more depth, but the processor is clearly at work on the X90. It's a clean image. Now here is Jennifer Gala's aspect here, where we go, where you'll see the black bars. You'll see how black they are head on. The X90 actually controls them very, very well. And the 900E was always good at this. The reason why I wanted to show Jen's content is not only is it filmed with black bars, it's also in HDR. So SDR, a lot of times with the black bars, was never really the culprit. It was when in HDR that everything was maxed that you would see blooming into the black bars, especially in early on in HDR's introduction. From dead on, and there is no aperture change on the camera, which I'll show you as I walk around the side of the panels. I do not change the aperture to decrease blooming at all. I keep everything the way it is. As I take it off the tripod and I show you, you can see the blooming on both. On the top right and on the bottom. Now, we weren't even that far off angle. I wasn't completely on the side, but it was there. Again, special thank you to Jennifer. She does amazing work. A lot of her demos are space, and they're very vibrant, but they are absolute murder on LEDs. And there's Jennifer's credits. Let those roll real quick. And now we're going to roll over, thank you, Jennifer, to Hisense, where the Hisense demo is also very punishing to LEDs. On purpose, we'll leave that. Now you can see how the algorithm of the X90 takes a second, but the 900E is a little bit quicker. That could be due to the dimming zones. But once they kind of normalize, they're both fine. But there's definitely more blooming on the X90 than there is on the 900E. Again, different way of thinking back then. But you see the vibrancy on the X90. It's missing on the 900. So very important to notice the difference. Do you want the vibrancy of the X90? Or the light control? See here, it's clearly jumping out at you. So very, very different. There's a very hard demo with the smoke and the black level and the flames. Very, very difficult. You're going to hear my family walking in. I can't stop filming. I've already stopped like 10 times, so we'll bear with them. And so here they are, this tacky bass player. You have the DJ in the HDR videos. You can see when the flames, it's a very difficult. And now here we are. I'm going to switch over to Vivid, and we are going to make this as punchy as we can. Now, the reason I do a Vivid preset, as I mentioned, many people do use these presets for animation, anime, Pixar, things of that nature, DreamWorks. I do like to show how vibrant they can look. We are in a very dark room, by the way. I should have said that earlier on. The reason why I want to say that we're in a dark room is that LEDs can be used in a dark room. They're not as strong as OLEDs, but they still can be enjoyed, and they're very, very vibrant, especially with the higher peak brightness. I like putting it in the Vivid preset to show people actually what they're seeing in store more than anything. When you walk into a store, most times you are in Vivid. You will see that's what draws you in, which is also why I want to do a little shout out for Samsung, as they have some of the best demos in the business, and they look amazing in store. If you ever get a chance when you're walking in a location, if you see a Sony or a Samsung, grab the remote and see that it'll be on Vivid, or as we call torch mode. Now, I can easily chop up this video and do 5 videos on them, 5 minutes each. I apologize for the long form, but these are the way I like to do my videos. Take a long time with them, really describe them, and then you can draw your own narrative into what you see. Is it the black level? Is it the peak brightness? Is it the depth? There's times where both, now being in Vivid, by the way, everything's enabled. Live color, advanced contrast enhancer, all those are enabled right now. And to me, the X90 looks more like a Samsung, which is interesting because do you perceive that as more color? Though the color gamut is not as high, it's a more colorful image. So the reason why I wanted to show you this is it gets killed for not having as much color, but do you see more color in the bottom or do you see more color on the top? Some can argue there's more color at the top, it's just deeper and different tones, where there's more singular color in the bottom portion. Now, as I mentioned also, by using Jennifer's content, I'd love to be able to show you movies. Copyright is murder on YouTube and can't risk that. I've had videos taken down for showing pause screens. You can be creative with it and speed them up, but that really, or change the dimensions of it, and all that really does is change how it really looks. Now, that butterfly right there is interesting because it's dimmer in one corner on the 900E. And here the colors are very exaggerated on the X90. Now, granted, I'm not a calibrator. I'm not trying to be a calibrator. What I am showing you is real world imagery. Not me calibrating it or toning it down. I'm talking about what you see in your house. That is my goal, is to bring you what you'll see. Calibrators, there's plenty of YouTube people that'll be very accurate. They'll calibrate it, they'll talk all the numbers. That's not my focus or my interest. I find it interesting to watch, but not to do. What I want to show you is what you'll see in your living room, your bedroom, your house. In Vivid mode here, what I'm showing you is what you're going to see in the store. These are the images that are going to grab you as you walk around. Now, while I do love the depth and black level of the 900E, I do really much enjoy the X90's vibrancy. I do predict the X95 is going to be a huge jump up and closer to the Z8H of last year. Albeit that was an 8K panel, this will be 4K. But I do feel they'll be very similar content-wise, or I should say image-wise. Now switching them back here, trying to make the images look closer together. Now, as I'm editing these, I'm editing them also on a smaller screen, so I can't always see what I'm doing in the video, so you have to apologize. I'll apologize for that. And I believe here I'm leaving them separate and then bringing them more in line. So really showing you how you can make them look very different from one another and then very similar. But even at the same preset, same color temperature, they can at times, as I mentioned earlier, look exactly the same, and then at times look like they're from another manufacturer. And that's not just from demo to demo, it's from scene to scene. Now, doing these demos or these comparisons are painstaking. I should have said to you earlier that the Sony 900E, due to its age and not being updated, was not able to jump on my Wi-Fi or not able to even connect by LAN cable. So I had to use a Fire Sticks YouTube app. And I know that's because I didn't update it. I haven't updated it since, the first few months I had it. All these demos are very beautiful. But you must agree that there's times they look exactly the same and then completely different. The X90J will be going back in a few weeks. We will hopefully have the X95 here. And as I mentioned before, you can purchase the same panel. It's only got about 13 hours on it at Value Electronics as an open box, and they will give you a new warranty. I'll also do a video on my favorite demos. Many of them are in this video. The newer LG Global Mini QNED demos are phenomenal. They just don't show up well on LEDs on camera. They do struggle, as they're very quick transitions. And the reason I brought up not lowering the aperture is I want it to be what I see for you guys. And let me know what you think of not only the Sony 900E. Was it a better time back then with the Q8FN, the Z9D, KS9800? Or are you liking where it's headed? Do you like the mini LED thought process? What do you think of the X90? Will it be something you look at as prices fall? Now, in this scene here, this is actually where I'll disable the local dimming. I didn't disable it before, or I'm sorry, this is where I'll disable the live color to make it look more similar. I'll show you here on the fly. I'll go in, disable live color, and you'll see how live color disabled on the X90 looks more like the 900E with live color enabled. So I misspoke. I'm not going back to re-edit that. That was like 20 minutes ago. But you'll see them better on screen than even I'm describing. So as I rewind this, you'll see how the saturation of this demo, the X90 is much more like the 900E with live color enabled, which is interesting. And they're both at the same saturation level. You can change the vibrancy and saturation. So earlier in the video, I had changed something else. You'll see that closer than I can on the smaller screen as I edit. But let me know what you think. I think they're very, very close, which some will say is not a compliment considering how old the 900E, but again, it's from a different time. Gorgeous demos. All right, guys, thank you as always for watching. Many people don't get this late in the video. We're at nearly 30 minutes. What do you think? Are you leaning towards LEDs, mini LED, dual cell from the Hisense? Are you now moving towards 8K? Are you looking at last year's panels? Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think. Who won this comparison? Was it a fight? Was it close? Was it far away? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you as always for watching. Love you guys. I will see you in the comments. Take care.